Hello, and welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
This is Biff.
So, Biff, in the 30 years I've been playing hockey in the LA area, is it not the most shocking thing how many celebrities play?
This is true. Yes, I mean, yeah, it is weird that, we've played with the Keanu Reeves and, whoever, Cuba Goodings and Mike Myers and all those people, right?
I mean,
Yep.
we could do a podcast where we just are
Sure,
name
yeah.
dropping D-bags.
Right.
What other people don't understand is how many ex-NHLers
Right.
show
Yeah.
up at pickup. You played 5-6 years in the NHL. Your last year was with the Kings, with the Ducks. Are you?
Sure.
You got $3 million in the bank. Are you moving back to Banff, Alberta, or are you staying in the sunshine?
Well, I mean, some of them do, but I mean, but sure, yeah.
But it's overwhelming how many.
A lot of them hang around in Southern California, and so yeah, absolutely.
Am I exaggerating if I say 50 NHLers have shot on you in pickup games and in tournament games? Is that exaggeration?
I would say probably closer to like 30, but 50 is a lot.
But we're talking people like Alexander Day, number one.
I've never had Alexander Daigle, but I've had others.
Okay. But I played against Dag a few times. I made 2 nice moves in a row, and it's funny because 2 guys on the bench were like, "Oh my God, you read that? You did this?" And I looked, I'm like, "Do you think he came out of second gear?" Like literally, yes.
Yeah.
I think he had 2 left skates on, and was
okay. So we're talking way too much. Way too much. So
with all the celebrities, with all the NHL players, did we ever play with anybody who was a better teammate, a nicer person, or a smarter player than Maria Dennis?
No, Maria, basically, hockey says, up the yin yang, right? I mean, yeah, no doubt.
And with that said, we like to welcome our good friend who we're embarrassing, Maria Dennis, to the podcast.
Thank you, Jacques. Thank you, Biff. So good to be here. Yes, I'm blushing. That was very nice intro. Thank you.
Well, here's the other thing that I have a running list that I keep in my phone of how small the world is. And so Biff and I are playing a number of years with this guy, All-Star Tommy, great guy, another great hockey player, like top 10 player I've ever played with who didn't play in the show. And it turns out he played at Yale. And then it turns out his beloved wife, Lisa, played at Yale. And coming up in conversation one day, it's like, oh, Lisa played with Maria at Yale.
Yeah.
Yep. She was my favorite right winger. Oh my gosh, we were close. We were close on the ice and off the ice. And I just loved her to death. And she was a former figure skater. And she was a great skater. And I remember when they started dating at Yale. So I remember Tom and Lisa.
That's awesome.
And
but before we go too far, can you just kind of tell us, so maybe tell us, hey, what's your current job?
So my current title, it's kind of long, is I'm the Senior Director of Player Health and Safety, and I'm also Senior Counsel, I'm a lawyer, at the National Hockey League Players Association, which is the union. People don't realize we are a union for the NHL players in the NHL. So that's my current job, and I love it. I've been here since 2011, which means I had to leave Los Angeles and you two back in 2011 to come here and live in Toronto.
And I think it's worked out for you.
I don't mind.
So I'm going to finish off on the Yale thing. Just to embarrass Maria a little bit more, Lisa one day tells us, oh, Biff, I told you this recently. Her nickname at Yale was the franchise.
Yeah.
Oh, Lisa, like the way she talked about you is the way that Lisa talks about you. It's great. It's like the reverence and so you go from Yale. Let's just talk about your playing career first. So you played at Yale. Where did you grow up playing high school hockey? How did you wind up at Yale?
So I grew up in Connecticut in the 70s. They started a town program in my local town. And I was 6 years old, and my father decided to put me on the ice. I have no idea why he thought to put me on the ice in the 70s when, there weren't very many girls or women playing hockey. And I tried it out, and I ended up loving it. It's actually a funny story about, my first time on the ice. But to this day, I don't know. I asked my dad, he just smiles. He's like, "Oh, I didn't think anything of it." Yeah, sure, Dad, you didn't think anything of it. Like, I just don't understand to this day why he thought to put me on the ice. I was one of two girls out there, and I ended up being one of two girls who played in the state. So we knew each other because there were no girls who played like travel hockey.
You have any funny stories about your first time on the ice?
Oh yeah. So my parents were great because they wanted to try different activities with me. So I tried gymnastics and I tried all these different sports. I love gymnastics. I would have probably continued with gymnastics, but it conflicted with hockey, and I loved hockey more. But my parents put me on the ice. I was in pink corduroys, a white fluffy sweater, a helmet, gloves, a stick, and hockey skates, right? So that was what I was wearing. And because they wanted me to try hockey. Now they have try hockey for free days where you get the equipment for free and stuff like that. The NHLPA is a sponsor of that program. But back then they didn't have try hockey for free days. So they put me on the ice in my white fluffy sweater and my pink corduroys. And I come off halfway through and I'm crying, right? I'm crying. My mother's like, "Why are you crying? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I said, "Mom," and this was my biggest fear as a kid. I cannot hear what the coach is saying. What if I do something wrong? I'll embarrass myself. So that was my biggest fear, of being embarrassed. It always was when I was a kid. And so she said, "Okay, Maria, go stand right next to the coach and you'll always hear what he's saying." Because you stand right next to him, because when coaches yell across the ice, you can barely hear what they're saying. So anyway, I stood next to the coach. I heard everything he was saying. I did the drills right. And I came off with a big smile on my face, and that was the rest is history. I just loved it.
And that is awesome.
There was no girls' high school hockey in the 70s.
No. So what happened was I grew up playing with the boys. I grew up playing checking. There's full body checking. And I developed very fast skating skills because of that.
Yeah.
And when I was about to go to high school, we had junior high. So 7th, 8th, and 9th grades were in junior high. And then when I hit 10th grade, before that, I was deciding, well, should I go to my local high school or should I go to a prep school? Because back then the prep schools were, they're all preppy and there was a much better education than my local high school could give. And they happened to have girls only hockey teams. But back then, the girls only hockey teams were, they maybe had a line or two of girls who could play hockey, and then the other lines were mostly converted figure skaters. Excuse me. Anyway, so I chose the education. If I had chosen hockey, I would have gone to my local high school because the coach wanted me to come and play. And he actually invited me to the practices. And I practiced with the high school team. There's this 9th grader practicing with seniors in high school, body checking, right? And there's a one-on-one drill. And I just remember this one guy who I had a crush on, by the way, because he was super cute. But he was their best defenseman, and he was amazing. He was an amazing hockey player. And I was like, one-on-one, it was my biggest fear. And I could never get around the guy because he was 3 years older than me, twice my size. And anyway, I could have played. I wouldn't have obviously played as much in my first year or so. I would have played, but I was very fast. So I could avoid a lot of body checks. So I was very fast. So anyway, if I had chosen hockey, I would have gone to the local high school, but I chose the prep school route and I played with the girls. And basically, this. I could kill a penalty off by myself if I wanted.
Yeah.
So,
let's see. You grew up in New England in the 70s. I wonder if there's anybody who was great at killing penalties on the local professional team that you might have been getting some ideas from. That's awesome.
Do you know my parents had season tickets to back then it was New England Whalers?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
And it was the Hartford Whalers.
Right.
So when they went from the WHA to the NHL, so I have the Hartford Whalers goal theme song in my head forever. Like I will never forget that song.
It's funny because I have somewhere my uncle went to the very first New England Whaler game, and I have the program somewhere either been in my storage or up in my mom's attic. And I would go to Hartford games because the Forever 500 Whalers. I lived an 20-minute train ride from the Garden, but the Garden was always sold out. You couldn't get in. You could get Hartford Whaler tickets $5, $6, $7.
Well, similarly, right? So my first hockey game I've ever been to was, I lived in Toronto at the time. So it was a Toronto Toros versus the New England Whalers. That's the first hockey game I've ever been to. And the amazing thing is, my very first game, like in the second period, we have seats behind the goal. The goalie makes a save, and the puck comes flying into the stands, and everybody stands up in front of me. It goes through everybody and hits me in the face. And so now the guy who took me to the game was one of my dad's, employees. So he's freaked out that his boss's son just got hit in the face with a puck, and he goes, "Oh, we need to leave." I'm okay. It's just a little bloody nose. No, we need to leave right now. It's like, he kind of freaked out.
So you getting hit in the face with a puck at your first game, mate, you say, I'm good at this. I'm going to be a goalie and stop lots of pucks.
It didn't kill me.
What am I afraid of? Exactly.
So then, did you want to go to Yale? Was being a lawyer always part of the plan, or how did you wind up at Yale? How was hockey at Yale? How did that transition happen?
Not that we're criticizing the school or anything. I'm sure it's a fine school.
This is my dad always has great advice for me when I'm going into these life stages and these life decisions. And my parents said to me, look, Maria, if for some reason you broke your leg, God forbid you broke your leg, you couldn't play hockey, what school would you want to go to? Because there were only 3 universities that played really good women's hockey, and all the really good hockey players went to either UNH, so that's New Hampshire, Providence College, or Northeastern University in Boston. And those 3, all the national team players, all the eventually national team players would go to those 3. And then there were the Ivy Leagues, and out of the Ivy Leagues, Yale was the worst. So pretty far down there back then. Now they're number 1, or they all, they went to the NCAA finals the other year. So now they totally changed their program around, but back then we were pretty bad. So, but I took my parents' advice to heart, and I said, well, which school would I be happy at if I couldn't play hockey? So I chose it for the school, but funny enough, I really chose it because it's the only campus I didn't get sick at. So this is a really funny story. I went to my final few selections. I had narrowed it down, and I threw up on the campus at Brown because when you get nervous and your stomach is all and I turned green and I lost it on the Brown campus, so I couldn't go there. I almost did the same thing at Harvard, but I recognized the signs a little earlier this time. So I'm like, I had to sit down. I have to sit down. So I'm like, I couldn't get in the car or else I would get car sick on the way home. So I couldn't go to Harvard. And Yale was the only campus I didn't get sick at. So that's how I chose it.
And you went there, and where did you end up going to law school?
So I went to law school at Georgetown University. And they had a men's club team there.
So
it kind of came full circle. So I played men's club team. I don't know what, we were in the southeast division of some club hockey. I don't know what division, but I was back to full body checking. And again, at that point, fear is a great motivator, right? So I skated super fast.
I want to point out for a second. Maria, to everybody who's listening, it's an audio thing. Maria talked about being a gymnast. Think of gymnasts and how they're built. That's exactly what you're picturing. Maria is not. We have lots of friends who women play hockey. Some of them, just bowls and china shops. She is. I would love if there's a picture of you with our old friend Mike Butter side by side. Oh. I would give anything, because I don't want to give away all of your height and everything, but let's just say, think Nadia Comaneci physique,
So before we go too far into Georgetown, though, back at Yale, like, how well did you do at Yale, like relative? I mean, just.
Well, so the team, I mean, we had a great coach my first 2 years. Her name was Kathy Lenahan, and she was the captain at Providence. So she was one of those Providence girls who was really super good. But Yale did not put any money into their women's hockey program. So she had a full-time job and then was coaching the women's program on the side. And she had to make a decision at a certain point whether she was going to have a life and work one full-time job, or if she was going to, be strung out on, working 24 hours a day for 7 days a week and do the women's hockey program. And she ultimately had to make a decision. So we lost Kathy at the end of my sophomore year. And then we had 2 different coaches for my junior and senior year. And back then there was this lack of support for women's sports, but mostly women's hockey. It was not high on their priority list. And it was a source of frustration for me. I mean, I don't know if I would have made the same decision again. I don't know. Because certainly the other Ivy Leagues were great schools too. I mean, I'm not going to knock Harvard or Brown or Princeton, but it was a source of constant frustration that they didn't prioritize or treat the women's hockey. We got hand-me-downs for women. And I am 5'2", Jacques. So 5'2", so to get a hand-me-down equipment from the men's team, nothing's gonna fit me. Like, there's just no way. The helmets were too big, the gloves were too big, everything was too big. So I actually played in my own gear that I brought with me from high school, from youth hockey. So and when my stick was broken, I never broke a stick, although I broke a stick once on a slap shot and I kissed the ice when it happened. But I never really broke a stick until that point. That was like my junior year. But they were the old wood sticks. So they get mushy on the bottom. I'd be like, look, I need a new stick. And the equipment manager, who was the men's equipment manager, would look at me and go, oh, no, you could play with it a few more games. Just tape it up. So that's how women's hockey was treated. And funny enough, it's a sore spot with me, because we went in and we talked to the athletic department. We told them how we were treated. We told them what we needed, and we just got the cold shoulder. So it's still kind of a little chip on my shoulder. And then after I graduated, they tried to get rid of the program, and some players who used to play with me, my teammates, they threatened a Title IX lawsuit, and of course Yale backed down. But anyway, so it was back then when women's sports were still struggling with that male-dominated prominence and prioritization. And so I came kind of from a different era. So we did not well as a team. We did really well under Kathy. Like we were climbing the ranks. We weren't number one, but we weren't the last place team. And I still ended up getting a lot of the scoring, awards and titles and records, even against my male counterparts. But we only skated like 18 to tops 20 games a season. And, so we kind of had to fight for everything that we wanted, and it was a constant struggle. But if we didn't fight, then the next generation wouldn't have any.
Just one more thing before. So you're the record holder for the Yale program, hockey program, for most goals and most points. Am I incorrect?
You know what? I don't know if it's goals or points, but yeah,
I thought it was goals.
I used to hold a record for a lot more, and then slowly they started adding games. Like
right. No,
well, I was gonna say not just that, but like so to I know that what I read was you hold the record for goals and points, and I do remember that aforementioned Lisa's husband Tom has played with at least I think 2 NHL players. Like he had like Bob Kudelski and Randy Wood. I want to say
Randy Wood and Bob Kudelski,
right? Yeah. On his team, because I looked him up on HockeyDB a long time ago and said, "Wow!" So it's like if you think about it, it's just mind-boggling that you hold records above people who are like actual known NHL players of that era, right? I mean, I guess Yale wasn't really a place where many NHL players went back then. I mean, certainly, they go there now, but just the fact that these guys made it to the show, and you hold records above those guys.
So we will segue into where the women's game is now. But so you go to law school, you're playing men's hockey and law school. Law school's over. You get your degree. How do you wind up? How do we cross paths with at the time mid-70s French Canadian running hockey in Southern California? How did we all cross paths? What got you to LA? How do you go from Connecticut, Yale to grad school to Los Angeles?
So what happened was when I was in law school, the guy I was dating at the time, my boyfriend, wanted to come to LA to be in the movie industry. So he wanted to be a producer, executive producer. So he's like, Maria, why don't you do one of your internships between, one of your summers? Why don't you do an internship out in LA? And we'll go be in LA. And so I did, and I had a blast. I worked for this large law firm out in downtown Los Angeles. And then I went back to do my 3rd year of law school, which is the last year of law school at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And we broke up. So we broke up in my 3rd year. And at that point, it was too late to pivot. I had already accepted the position because after you intern there, then they extend full-time position offers. So I had already accepted the offer, and I tried to find another job somewhere else, but it was late in the cycle and I couldn't, it was too late. They had already done their hiring. So I tried to stay in Washington, D.C. I tried to find a job in New York City or Boston. So I couldn't. So I went out to LA, and that's also when that recession hit, because that was the first Iraqi war.
Yeah.
And so I went out to LA, and then I just stayed. Like I stayed for almost like 20 years. I just stayed. And it's funny because back then there were 3 rinks. There was Burbank, Pickwick, Burbank. There was
Culver City,
North Hollywood, Culver City.
That tiny Van Nuys rink.
Van Nuys rink.
And I never skated in that one back then. I mean,
and Pasadena had a rink, tiny rink also, but yeah. And then they have Paramount where Zamboni was born, but that's way
Paramount, right? And that's it.
And how surprised were you? Because, when I got out there, I was surprised at how big, roller hockey was big, but ice hockey. And I didn't associate. I mean, Gretzky had just got out there a few years before, and that changed things. But what I was surprised when I got out there in '95 is how it's a small community, but it's a real robust community. And it was the first. I'm not there a couple months. I don't know anybody. I'm playing on a celebrity roller hockey team, but nobody had played ice hockey. Yeah. I wanted to play. I called the rinks. I lived in Pasadena. I called
the Pasadena rink. Yes.
Pasadena rink. I hadn't played there, and that's when the guys like, I couldn't play in a league because I worked on a TV show, so weird hours, all this stuff. And they're like, well, here's a guy's number. It turned out to be Legua. And then we come to find out that he is the godfather of Southwestern hockey. Yeah. And it was in the first couple skates that I literally end up meeting people who I'm closer to Biff, I'm closer to John, I'm closer to, a bunch of Paul Regar, and I talk on a regular basis, another Boston transplant. Yeah. And once you make it past the first year, you don't leave LA unless a great job comes up. But if you have this hockey family, which is insane. And
so that's how, whenever I moved to a new place, so when I moved to DC for law school, I found my friends. I immediately went to the rink. I called them up. I said, I need a pickup, a drop in. I need some. So that's how I made my friends in DC.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated 3 years later, I missed my hockey friends. But I did the same thing when I moved to LA. I called Burbank. I called Pickwick Arena and I said, do you have any drop-in hockey? Do you have any pickup hockey? And they gave me Paul Laguerre's number.
That's awesome.
And he's like, they skate really late at Friday nights and blah, 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 10 to midnight or something. And I'm like, fine. You know, I was young then, I could skate that late. And I called him up, and in his French accent, he said, oh, yes, you know, we have room, but we're going to put you on the second line first. And so I had to get my way up. I had to work, I had to have my tryout, right?
Yes.
You know, you start in the second line, you work your way up to the first. So that's how I did
you're
it.
that person that shows up. Oh, yeah, that person's on the second line is like, we're getting toasted because you know.
The old joke is like when I would have the privilege of running Friday night for Paul, and all the second line people who think they belong on first line, I would say what happened with Maria. You saying I belong on the first line doesn't mean crap.
Yeah.
Right.
The other 11 people on the second line saying, get this person off. Please send them to the show. And so the hockey thing isn't a Georgetown thing. It isn't an LA thing. My wife in 2014 got a job in Qatar. And before she took it, I said, if there's hockey, and I don't mean hockey, is there a rink I can go skating? Can I keep my legs under me? I called and found out there's a robust league. I mean, a robust international league, national team, but there's pickup hockey. And because I'm a wingnut, I talked to a guy, I came out to visit, and the first day he's like, it's on this night. He brings me in the locker room. Everybody says hi. Everybody's super friendly. It was the UN, a few Finns, a few Swedes, a couple Russians, most of Canadians. I have my old Charlestown Chief jersey. I look like I look. I have the jersey on. I look up, and I only know one guy on the other side of the room. And I'm like, Dave, do you got any tape? He goes, yeah. He picks up the tape. He goes to throw it to me. I have tinfoil on my hand. and for the scene from Slapshot. Yeah. And it's an international thing. Before I left that locker room, I had 20 brothers who would lay down in traffic for me. And because I don't suck too bad, and because the only real skill I have is I'm a good passer, people like the guy who passes to them. And my wife had been in the country for a couple months. She worked so much. She knew some people. I come home that one time with a phone full of numbers of people saying, this is where our kid does piano. Oh, let's have a play date here. We live over here. I mean, honestly, it was such a worldwide welcoming thing that if you can find a rink, you have instant friends. So you're in LA for 20 years. That's how we meet you. And now you're there. You're a lawyer. But how do you go from being a lawyer in LA playing hockey to the NHL? How did you finally make it to the NHL, Maria?
I made it to the NHL. Okay, so this is actually a good story. So while I was in law school, I was a second year at law school, and my dad, who was quite active in USA Hockey, he was like the director of New England and the district and everything. Wow. He had been campaigning to get girls hockey, women's hockey as an Olympic sport for years and years, because he knew that behind me there was an even bigger population of girls growing up, and behind that population or that generation there was another generation of all these girls, and it was getting bigger and bigger and growing, and he wanted there to be a place to go. And it's funny because he actually got in trouble for he wrote, because he figured that the other strong country that played hockey, he thought it was the Soviet Union. And so I don't know, I'm probably telling this story wrong, but he wrote some letter to somebody saying, do you have a women's hockey team? And, don't you think it should be an Olympic sport? And people ended up Secret Service people or somebody up and down my street going, do you know Maria Dennis's father? And what kind of man is he? Is he a spy? And the whole thing. Because, back then it was still Cold War. But anyway, so my dad had been campaigning for that. And finally, in 1990, the IIHF decided to have a women's world championship. Right. And so it was the first women's world tournament. And I was, I was in my prime, 4 years at Yale, best shape of my life. And then I was just hanging on playing, with the men's team at Georgetown, not really we had like one practice and one game or 2 games a weekend. So we didn't really practice very much. And it was my it was the Christmas break, and we had tryouts for the women's national team. And I had just been eating potato chips and drinking Diet Cokes like there's no tomorrow because I was on my 2-week exams. Like I had all my exams. And so I was in horrible shape. I was sleep deprived. I finished my exams, but I made the team. So I was really happy I made the team. But, back then there's no, okay, you're on the team. We're going to put you in a residential setup and we're going to practice every day. And here's your nutrition and here's your here are your coaches and your massage. No. My dad bought us the warm-up suits. Another dad bought us our hockey bags. USA Hockey paid for a little prop plane to go up to Ottawa to play in the actual championships. We got together 4 days before to practice. Like, we didn't know each other. We hadn't played in, together. And we ended up still, obviously, just based on talent, getting a silver medal because we lost to Canada. They had an open net goal. So I say it was 4-2, but it was 5-2. So, but that was our first taste of being on an international scene. We played in front of, and I used to have this number memorized, but it was like 8,874 people. And when you play in front of 8,000,
that's a lot.
174 people, you have wings on your skates. You do not get tired. Like you just like you're just skating so fast. Yeah. And because you're so excited to be on that world stage, it was a surreal experience.
That's incredible. Wow.
But I will say, we were all nervous for the final game, and usually we ran down the tunnel so that we could get a running start onto the ice and come out like firing all cylinders. And I didn't realize I had my skate guards on.
Oh, nice.
You will be impressed. I made it from the corner, like the Zamboni corner, to the top of the circle before I fell.
Oh.
Yep.
And that is impressive.
Kelly Owen, I think she was from Minnesota. I think Kelly Owen says, skate guards.
No,
everybody laughed. So it kind of reduced the tension. And so I did my job.
So any luminaries from that team? Was like Cami Granado on that team?
Cami Granado, she was a young 18-year-old phenom. And that was her first foray into the international scene. And we were all on our way out.
Right.
I couldn't hang on. I just couldn't do it. It was 1992 and the next one rolled around. I was already, practicing law and I was, a young lawyer. So I did the crazy hours and I was playing beer league in LA, Jacques and Biff, when you go out there, you play pickup and it's beer league. And
it's not the same. Now, please tell me you have your jersey framed and it's at Mom's house over the fireplace.
It's definitely at Mom's house, but it's probably in a bin somewhere down in the cellar.
Please get it out. I will have it framed for you. I'm actually going to, it's near New Haven next weekend. Our friend, Guitar Center Scotty's son Mazza, who is playing prep hockey in Quebec, is playing a tournament down near New Haven. And every time he's within a couple-hour drive, my son and I go down to see him. He's a sweetheart kid. Well, his dad's a sweetheart, Mom's a sweetheart, his kid's a sweetheart. So we're going to go to, I will drive by Mom's house. I will pick it up. I will have it framed. And my little guy who lives for football, soccer, we're planning on coming up to Toronto to see Toronto New England Revs game. game and I will hand deliver it to you. That's not an empty thing. If I get that jersey, and again, talking about a tiny world, we won't segue into it. That's 1990. 2001, we have a mutual friend who starts playing pro hockey in Vancouver. And the first season, this woman, she's the only American on the team. The second season, Cami Granado comes over, Shelley Looney comes over, and now here I am. She was our friend from LA was the only one on the 2002 Vancouver Griffins who wasn't in the starting lineup of the 2000 Olympics. And I can tell you, I got to be very good friends with Cami and Shelley, and the way they talked about you was the way that Lisa talked about you at Yale. So there's a span where everybody I've crossed paths with understands what a pioneer you were, and that you are one of the shoulders that were stood on to get women's hockey to where it was in 2002. And where it is in 2024. So believe me, if you don't think that the people standing on the shoulders of you and the teammates from 1990 and the Yale girls and the one girl in Connecticut you played with in the 70s, trust me, Maria, like what you've done to pave the road for these, athletes is not forgotten.
So, well, that's sweet of you to say. I'm blushing, actually. That's really nice.
It's true.
All I think of is that I'm pissed that I wasn't born later.
5 years later, 6 years later.
It's one of those things though, like in some ways, right? Because if you weren't, there when you were, right? Like, I don't know if the women's program would have been where it ended up in, let's say, 94 and 90, ultimately in 98, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those, it sucks that, you should have been on that 98 team.
Well, but that's
but you're the one that is the architect, you're part of the architect of that team.
Really. I did try to come out of retirement. I took a sabbatical. I had already been practicing law for about 7-8 years at that point, and I just couldn't undo the damage of sitting at a desk for that long and playing beer league for that long with you guys. Thanks a lot. And, but anyway,
I apologize.
I tried. To this day, I don't regret trying, because if I didn't try, I would be on my rocking chair as an 88-year-old going, I should have tried for that.
And to that point, that coach was Ben Smith, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the friend that we had in LA was getting all these college offers and wasn't a college person. And it's funny because when your parents said, hey, if you break your leg, where do you want to go? Ben Smith basically told this player the same thing, that, hey, don't go to college to play hockey. Go to college because you'll take away a scholarship from somebody who wants to do. Here's this league. And in the conversations with him, because he's the one that sent her up to Canada, originally sent her to Toronto because that's where the better team was. 9/11, she couldn't get a flight there. So they shipped her rights to Vancouver so she could be driven up there. But we talked to Ben and we're like, hey, this is who she's worked with. She's been mentored. And as soon as your name came up in conversation, like the glowing like things that just flew out of him about the fact that this person that we're all friends with was mentored by you was basically, okay, I'll watch her skate, but if she gets the nod from Maria Dennis, she's going to play in this league. So it's not just the women around you, the Shelley Looneys, the Camis, the Lisas who know it. It's the Ben Smiths of the world who realize that you paved this road. So,
that's sweet. Wow. Well, I actually never answered your question because you said, how did I get here?
Yes.
So, because in the US, unlike in Canada, but the US has a federal law that says if you have a national governing body of a sport, so it could be hockey, it could be tennis, it could be soccer, whatever. If you have a national governing body of a sport that goes to the Olympics or World Championships, you have to have, back then it was 20% athlete representation on your board. And the way you qualify as an athlete is you either have competed in a Worlds or the Olympics. So because I competed on the world team in 1990, I was eligible to sit on the board of USA Hockey. So they had to comply with this federal law. Back then it was called the 1978 Ted Stevens Olympic and Amateur Sports Act. I don't know what it's called now, but so I was part of that 20% athlete representation. Wow. So because you can't make all these decisions about sports and where these athletes are going to play and go and how they're going to compete and where the money's going to go to fund these programs without athletes having a voice. So that's how my athlete advocacy.
Wow.
Wow.
So because I sat on the board of USA Hockey, we send one athlete. Each sport sends an athlete to the next level, which is the US Olympic Committee. So, you know, squash was there and basketball was there, volleyball was there, and hockey was there. And the guy before me who held the position was Mark Fusco. I don't know if you remember the Fusco brothers.
Yeah, no, the Fusco brothers, because my pseudo brother got his doctorate from Harvard in 84.
Yeah, that would be his generation.
And going to Bright Arena to see games, that for me was like, holy cow, that's when my love for college hockey really was born. And the Fusco brothers, I think they both played on the 84 team.
Yep, I think so. Yeah. So Mark and Scott both played, and Mark was me. Mark was one of the 20% athletes on the USA Hockey board, and they elected him to the US Olympic Committee board, but his term was coming to an end. And so he thought it would be best to have a woman, kudos to him, take his place. And so I was elected by my peers to be the USA Hockey representative at the US Olympic Committee board. And through that, like, I served for 10 years. So through that advocacy, and it was all a voluntary position. We didn't get paid for this. We got our travel covered and everything, but we didn't get compensated for this. But we were the voice of the athletes. So if an important decision was being made, and back then we're formulating the whole drug testing system, we're talking about commercialization and the marketing rights of national governing bodies over equipment. It was a very, very important time to have athletes' voices heard. And so I sat on that board for 10 years, and I met Don Fear there because he served on the board as a public sector member. And he used to be, at that time, the executive director of the Major League Baseball Players Association. And his perspective, because he represented athletes, professional athletes, but he represented athletes. So he always sided with us, the other athletes, the amateur athletes, because he wanted the athletes' rights to be upheld. And he was all about fighting for athletes' voices and athletes' rights to be upheld. And so he always aligned with us, and he taught us a lot of good lessons too. He's like, hey, if you want this, go for this. And so he was a great friend to the athletes. And so we worked together. So when eventually he took the position with the NHL Players Association as their executive director back in 2010, I want to say, he said, Maria, I know you're a big athlete advocate and you're a lawyer. We need more lawyers on staff. Do you want to come and be a lawyer at the NHLPA? And I said, no, Don, I prefer to be a real estate transactional lawyer in Los Angeles. No, I'm just kidding. So,
for a second, I'm like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
No, are you kidding? This is my dream job. Are you kidding me? So I was like, of course I'll come. And so I packed up my stuff and left LA and moved to Toronto. And that's how I came to my position. It's because I had been advocating on behalf of athletes for years and years and years, but not my job. And so now I get to combine my passion with my job, and I love it. So
when we were talking the other day, things have changed so much in sports, you know, and we could talk forever how, you know, how many times did you get your bell rung, Maria, playing hockey? and what I mean by that is how many, and this is the honest question, how many undiagnosed concussions do you think you had?
I've had many.
I've woken up. I've lost 3 days of my life coming out of CAT scans from hockey that I don't remember the day before. And I played the whole game. I played well, but something. But when we play, you got your bell rung, and things have been changing. What has been the slowest thing to change in sports, women's sports, men's sports, is the health from the neck up, and not just the concussion protocols.
Right.
You know, which let's face it, in some sports they're taken more serious than others. You know, but look, they've come a long way from where we are. Right. But when we talked the other day, we had a wonderful talk about mental health finally being addressed on a real substantive. Hey, this isn't for show. This isn't a PR blast going out. Can you talk about what the Players Association, not the league, is doing? Because this is the players saying, hey, you know, the money and all this stuff, that's the league. This is our health. Can you talk about that program and how that's come about?
Yeah, this is one of, again, my passions, and I'm really happy to see it come to fruition. But I think everyone realizes, and they realized during COVID, how important mental health is. And so as society has kind of realized how important mental health and mental wellness is, there grew this realization in our population, our membership, that, we need to take care of our mental health. And it's more accepted in society because I think people were really struggling during COVID and realizing that they needed to get some kind of support. And we even checked in with our players. So we hired, the NHLPA hired Dr. Jay Harrison right before COVID. And we formed this health and wellness team at the PA. And so during COVID, when people were in the bubble and people were going through all of this isolation, we had our experts check in with our players. We had our consulting psychologist, Dr. Joel Golds, check in with them. We had Jay Harrison check in with them and said, hey, just want to let you know we're here. Hope you're doing well, It was just a check in. And we heard back from our players that even though some never responded, they just appreciated getting the text. So sometimes it's just the reach out that makes a difference. And so we wanted to build on that post-COVID. So now that the world is trying to return back to quote unquote normal, although I don't think we'll ever return to pre-COVID levels, we realized that having a program that teaches our population about leadership and the skills that they need to have awareness about this topic is very important. So we created, in collaboration with the Mental Health Commission of Canada, this program called First Line. And like I said, it's a new leadership and education program that teaches our players the skills to allow them to become more conversant in mental health topics, to increase their knowledge about common mental health issues, give them skills to provide peer-to-peer support. We're not teaching them to be psychologists or psychiatrists. We're just teaching them to be kind human beings and able to provide meaningful support to maybe a teammate or a family member. And also it educates them on very basic concepts so that they feel comfortable talking about mental health. And they're more comfortable supporting their own mental health as well as their teammates and their families at home. So it's all about education. So we're providing this resource, this education program to our players, our membership. It's on a voluntary basis. The course could be delivered in person or virtually. It's taught by Dr. Harrison, who is now certified by the Mental Health Commission to actually be the trainer and facilitator of this course. And it takes a few hours, and we've had such great uptake on it. He's already given the training to about 20, I want to say 25 players. Don't hold me to that, but we just rolled it out, and he's already trained 25.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm taking this course, so it's something that we all should take. By the way, what we did with the Mental Health Commission is we took their course and we actually customized it so that the examples are in Hockey Talk, the scenarios are hockey specific scenarios, so they'll resonate with our members. But we don't have to customize it. We could, I took the original course before it was customized. And now I feel more comfortable talking to somebody about some issues or saying, hey, why don't you talk to a professional? I can't handle it. But, from what you said, I'm here for you, and I'm a shoulder or an ear. I could listen to whatever you need. And it just makes you more comfortable being able to provide support. So I think everyone should take it. It's just a great course.
I mean, well, I was just gonna say, as a, observer of this game, I just felt like there has been quite a bit of a culture shift. And, you're being so much closer to this. Do you feel that shift over that 10 years you've been there, or 10, 15 years you've been there?
I do. I feel the shift. And it's similar to the shift on concussions. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when I joined the PA in 2011, we were just starting to talk about concussion protocol. And we just implemented, going to the quiet room to get evaluated. If we see that you got a blow or indirect blow to the head, and you exhibit possible visible signs of a possible concussion, you're going to go back for safety's sake, get evaluated. If you're fine, you're fine. If you're not, at least, we took you out before more damage was done. And now there's this culture shift about teammates looking out for their teammates. Saying, hey, go get checked out. You're not looking right, or you don't look like yourself. Go get checked out. So this whole culture has shifted with regard to concussion and taking care of our physical health. So I feel like that culture shift will now occur on the mental health side.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
No, I mean, I remember in the NFL a couple of years ago, there was one guy clearly concussed, but they're in the hurry up offense, and one of his other offensive players realized, and he deliberately went offside to take a flag to stop the play. And as he's turning to go to his player, the guy falls. If that play had happened, his adrenaline probably would have kept going. He might make another catch or whatever. So it is without going off on a tangent, it's funny when people don't understand the old style of fighting the game was actually for player safety, to police the game overall. Sometimes a young player who's skating pitchforking with a stick up needs an older player to come in and nicely say, hey, before you put 5 people's eyes out, I'm just gonna give you a bop on the head and maybe. But no, the player driving it, because at the end of the day, it has to come from the players first. They have to, and in all the years we've played on different levels, man, there's people I just love coming across the blue line you can level, but never wanting to hurt anybody. And the older we get and stuff like that, it's like now it's like, you see a good check and it's great. It's part of the game, but you never even want to see the player on the team you like the least even hurt a little. You want them to, and I think the players really, that has changed so much. And I think it's what the Players Association is doing that really has to drive these things. So it's fantastic they have you. Before we let you go, there's a few things I wanted to throw by. What do you think of the health of the pro women's game these days?
Oh, so I just went to my first PWHL the other day. I bought season tickets to the Toronto franchise or team, and the actual NHLPA bought tickets too. So we have 4 total. But we used to support, so the NHLPA used to support the PWHPA players before they went into this professional league. Because back then, even just as little as last year, they were still considered a nonprofit charitable organization, so we could give them money. So we supported them for years. And before that, we supported them when they were the CWHL. So the NHL players have always supported the women's leagues. And now that they're this professional league, I went to my first game. It was packed. It was sold out. The crowd was loud. The television coverage was amazing. It's on TSN up here and Sportsnet up here. So all the games are televised up here, and every single game is televised on the PWHL YouTube channel. So if you can't get TSN or Sportsnet down in the States, you could watch every single game on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, no, the games. So I've watched about 4 games now, and I gotta say, you know what I really love about the single most thing that I love about this is the way they're calling the games, because you know what? It is chippy.
Oh, it's very chippy, and they're allowing body checking.
It's like, yeah, and you know what? When I was watching the Minnesota, I think it was Minnesota New York game, they're like the Minnesota crowd knows women's college hockey, and they're going, they're kind of doing the ooh ah thing, expecting penalties, and nope,
we're letting them play. They put the whistles away, and I love it. So there's full body checking, Jacques, full body checking. And someone said, well, they're not allowed to do open ice hits. Yeah. Do you know how many open ice hits I saw at that Toronto-Boston game the other night? There were like 4 or 5. And I was like, holy smokes. Yeah. That girl just got smoked.
It's brutal. It's great.
It's great. Yeah. It's great hockey, and it's clean. That was a clean check. Nothing's dirty. Like, it was good, hard hockey. And not only that, I showed a clip of, I think it was Taylor Heisey's goal. She plays her.
Oh my God. She had 2 that day.
Oh my God. She dangled. And I sent it to my male hockey friend. He's like, oh my God, that was like a McDavid. I mean, that's the skill level we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah. Well, so like, I think the other thing is, I love the way they've assembled, they assemble the teams. Like, I mean, listen, I hate to admit it, but in my mind, MPP is like the most clutch player in the history of the game. Yes. And so it's kind of right that she's in Montreal. There's all these other, Hillary Knight and Boston, all that stuff. I love the opening night where you had like, it was, the Minnesota Boston opening game was, you had like the last 2 Olympic, goalies for the USA, facing each other, all that kind of stuff. I just love the way the teams are assembled too. It's just incredible.
Have you seen them scuffle too? I mean, like they're fighting. Yeah.
Yeah. MPP is kind of she's kind of like McKinnon in that she's that kind of that sneaky, dirty almost. I want to say it's
she's gritty, very gritty.
Oh yeah, but she's like yeah, she does not mess around.
Biff and I have talked about this in 100 times over the last 10 years, the last 20 years. We've talked about it on the podcast. Is there, and I mean this, I mean Montreal versus Toronto, the Red Sox versus the Yankees, Dallas Cowboys, Steelers. Is there a better rivalry in all of sport than Team USA, Team Canada, women's hockey?
No, that's the biggest, longest, most outstanding rivalry there is. Although I will say, I mean, the rivalry still exists, but now because of the PWHPA, they had to work together. Right. They all put down their differences and their dislike for each other on the ice. They put it away when they had to work together to make this reality come true. Yeah. And now they still are mean to each other on the ice, but they respect each other. They play hard. They know to leave it on the ice, and they all work together to make this new league happen. I think it's wonderful.
Well, and they've also played on the same like university teams and stuff.
But honestly, since '98, has there been a game between those 2 teams? That's whether it's a gold game or whether it's a preseason friendly. Is there a game that wasn't appointment watching television?
No. I went to a U.S. rivalry series. If you don't know it, the listeners don't know it. It's the U.S.-Canada rivalry series where they, in the lead up to a World Championships or lead up to Olympics, they play some friendlies, right? So
friendlies.
Friendlies. So those games are hotly contested games. And I brought a guy hockey friend and his son who played Pee-wee. I think he was a Pee-wee at the time. So he would have been 12. I brought them to a game with a guy hockey friend that we all know, to the game in LA.
Yeah.
They were on the edge. The father and his son were on the edge of their seats. They loved it. They said, this is the best hockey they've seen in years. Yeah. They are huge. I turned them into huge women's hockey fans. I mean, they were women's hockey fans before, but seeing it live and appreciating the skill and oh my gosh, how close the game was. I don't know how it ended up, but they had a blast.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was so privileged and this is 20 plus years ago, to see, Callie Wickenheiser, who was playing for Calgary, play against Shelley and Cammie in Vancouver. And there was 6, 7, 7, 8 girls on the
Haley?
Calgary team. Who,
Haley Wickenheiser?
Yeah, she played in that league with our friend from LA. And just seeing like, man, there was no love lost even in these games. It was just, and it was kind of like the unofficial, hey, it's not Olympic year. You're going to play in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Canada's going to play in Calgary. And each one of those games. And I would bring the tapes home and just show my friend. And they'd be like, there was never a bad pass. No one was out of position. And there wasn't open ice hitting. Don't go in the corner.
Don't go in the corner.
Don't stand in front of the net. There was no free rides. You want to jump and chase up the boards and get the defenseman turning to follow the puck. They were gonna make the real estate along the boards very expensive.
I went to one of those rivalry games a few years back at the Pond, and once again, fantastic game. But I still kind of wonder. Like, I think Julie Chu is married to Caroline Ouellette. So Julie Chu, Canadian, American legend, Caroline Ouellette, Canadian legend. I don't know how they ever watched any of those games. It's like they probably have to like sit in separate rooms to watch those games.
Seriously, they probably do. And I just was like, how did you guys form a relationship? I mean, how did you cross that? You're an enemy.
Right. Yeah.
No, it is my last thing. I'm going to let you go. So I'm not going to ask a general question about like a blanket thing. What would you give to young hockey, people playing? I'm going to be selfish. My niece Julia is a phenom, and I've talked with you about her before, Maria, and Biff knows. Like, I think it was 2019, the Bruins took her to St. Louis for the All-Star thing. Her team qualified to play in a 3-on-3 tournament at the Garden, and both the men's and the boys and the girls team from each age division got to go to with the Bruins. But after the tournament, which her team won, so she qualified, every play in the tournament was in a shootout, and it went 50-ish rounds. She won the shootout. So she was on the ice with the Bruins All-Star weekend. The Nesson did basically a special on her, and so, like I said, she signed to go to Cushing. I think she was in the 6th grade or 7th grade. So she's at Cushing. She's a sophomore. What is your advice to a student athlete now about like work-life balance or school life balance, prioritizing? If you were to sit down and have a hot cocoa with my niece, what would you tell her? Hey, this is what's out there. This is where I am from point A to B. These are the options, but this is how you might want to look at prioritizing things going forward. What advice would you have?
Well, my parents always instilled in me how important school was. So I really did have the academic diligence to get to the schools I wanted to get to. Like, I didn't get to Yale because I was a good scorer. I got because they didn't give athletic scholarships. I got to Yale because I had a good grade point average. And I had good grades. So I definitely tell young people, you got to study, got to do well in school. And don't take it for granted. Don't think you're just going to get away with it if you're a good athlete. You have to be a well-rounded person. So apply yourself to your schoolwork as best you can. I mean, maybe it's not your forte, but do as best that you can. And the second piece of advice is do what you love and love what you do. So I love hockey. You guys know me. I will play till I'm Paul LaGuar's age. If I can. He is my hero. Yeah. I look up to him like nobody's business. When someone says, what do you want to achieve in life? And I just want to play hockey as long as Paul did. And because I love the sport so much, I don't care how lousy I'll get. I'll definitely play. I'll get close to Paul's age, I'm hoping. Because you got to love what you do. And if you don't love playing hockey anymore and you're working, because you spend a lot of time practice makes perfect. So if you don't love what you're doing, find something else you do love. Life's full of joy. You just got to find your joy. So
I saw you play last month. You're still a great hockey player.
Yeah, well, thanks. Oh my God. Every time I get older, I get slower, but that's okay. I don't care. I'm just going to keep playing.
but I mean, as much, and we said at the beginning, as much as you are a good skater, a really great skater, a great passer, you have the hockey intellect that it's not the next play. It's you are 2-3 steps above. You are never where the puck is. You're always where it's gonna go, a step before people. And literally getting to play with you, always a privilege. Playing against you, always a pain in the ass. I prefer watching because it's great to watch somebody this good from sitting up there like, oh, she's toying with that kid. He's 1.5 feet taller. He's faster. He's so much stronger. He can't figure out why she has the puck and he doesn't. So Maria, I mean, we had to move the schedule so many times. You know, I'll let Biff say his piece at the end, but I can't thank you enough for doing this. I can't thank you enough going back 20 years for the friendship and mentoring for our former friend, our friend who went on because of a lot of your tutelage, but what you're doing for the players in the NHL now with the mental health, making that a priority. It's just so great to hear that on the inside that means something. It's happening. And again, from Lisa to Cayman Granado to Ben Smith, everybody that you've passed on your way, that you've met, that you formed these relationships, understand what you've done for this sport, not women's sport, for this sport. On behalf of the people who don't get to talk to you on a regular basis, thank you.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate being on this podcast with you. We could go another hour. I'm telling you, I have more stories. Maybe we should do this again.
But I'll say, and I just want to add that, you know, I just think it's so amazing that, you know, you are where you are right now, because in the end, just like with, you know, sports is so competitive because everybody wants to do it, right? Everybody wants to be an, you know, athlete for a living, and only so many people can do it. But you know what? I think what you're doing now has a bigger impact on, you know, girls coming up in the sport even more, because, you know, it's a way they could say, you know what, I you know, if I don't, you know, if my time as a player is done or whatever, you know, there are opportunities in hockey for me as a woman. And you know what? And I just love the fact that, you know, I think that of all the sports, I think hockey is one of the ones where we have so much visibility of women in, you know, active roles. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, you're a huge one. I mean, it was great seeing at the PWHL, you know, draft. It's like, hey, I know that face, you know, you know, I mean, it was like, what, you know, but I mean, I think that visibility I think it's just incredible that, you know, there are women who are executives in, you know, in the NHL, in the sport, you know, in various forms. So I think in that sense, I'm really happy that, you know, the involvement of women in the sport is, you know, increasing, and, you know, people like you leading the way. So.
Well, you know, we didn't even get to talk about this, but I chair the Female Hockey Advisory Committee, and it's a joint NHL, NHLPA committee to do exactly that, to make sure that women get the opportunities to be in hockey at whatever level. They could be players, they could be officials, they could be coaches, they could be executives in the C-suite, they could be doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. So there's so many opportunities to be involved with the sport. That's why I say do what you love and love what you do, and it'll find you. Eventually, it took me a long time to find my dream job, but I just lasted it out, right?
Yeah, you know, if anyone deserves it, it's you, considering what you've done all those years past. I mean, come on.
So we're going to let you go, but we're going to title this Part 1, Maria Dennis, the franchise. We will circle back, because literally, like, mine and Biz's passion for this sport, we could, like, any aspect, we could just talk about officiating. You know, we could talk about the evolution of the puck.
No. The officiating. Let's not go there.
No. We could, well, you know, but the evolution of the puck, we could do a dissertation on that could get a doctorate degree.
Yes. Let's do part 2 sometime. I'm happy to do it. You guys are great. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much.
just heard.